Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear subscribers, I would like to speak about President Zelensky's and his chances of survival. So the title of today's presentation is Can Zelensky Survive the Current Corruption Scandal? Now, the world media is full of reports, and I've studied them extensively. All of these reports in European, in American, and in Russian, and in Ukrainian, reports about the newest corruption scandal that is unfolding in front of our very eyes as the arrests were made on the 10th, 11th, and 12th of November in Kiev. Now, the key figure in these arrests is Mr. Mindich, who fled a few hours before being arrested on an Israeli passport. Who is Mr. Mindich? He is a friend of President Zelensky. He is the co-owner of the Kvartal or Quarter 25 agency, which was where Zelensky started as a comedian, as a humorist, as a satirist, and that's where he made his career before he was propelled to the presidency. So Mindich is his best friend, and he has a nickname as Zelensky's wallet. But let me focus today on three basic questions. What is the substance of the allegations and their source? And I will tell you which sources are used. The second question is, who is behind it? Why now? Who is actually trying to draw political capital from this affair? And the most important question is, what does that mean? What are the implications? What is likely to happen as a result of this unfolding drama of the Mindich scandal? So this is where we stand today. And I start with the facts, with something that is been revealed in the various sources. Now, what I find is the most interesting, or one of the most interesting and complete sources, is the website strana.ua, which is a opposition, Ukrainian opposition source, which publishes regularly all kinds of interesting data on Ukrainian politics. Quite a lot was actually in the Russian sources of various newspapers that published details of what had been published in Ukraine. In Ukraine itself, very, very little is available because the press is controlled, and the substance of the allegations one can only read, if one could at all, having access to the websites of the Procuracy General and of the NABU, which stands for the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And most of the revelations come from that source. One should also say that this story it has a long beginning. It is not just overnight that this has all happened. You may recall that in the summer there were the so-called Karton protests, which is when people went out into the streets, encouraged by former President Poroshenko, in protest against Zelensky's attack on NABU, on the anti-corruption agency. So this is pretty much a continuation. It was evident at that time that Zelensky was eager to crush the NABU, the anti-corruption agency, and to subordinate it to himself. And those who didn't want to obey, he accused of being Russian agents. Some people were arrested, and the NABU was pretty much shut down. But then there was a counter movement, and that was initiated, as I said, by former President Poroshenko, who found a lot of support in the West. And by the West, it's very important to distinguish between the United States, that's FBI, and that's President Trump and his interests in Ukrainian politics on the one hand, and the Europeans on the other. And as I will argue later on in this podcast, the interests, the political interests of the Europeans and the Americans diverge significantly, and that may have political repercussions. So this is briefly the introductions, but what about the substance of the allegations? Well, the co-owner of the Kvartal 95, the agency, Mr. Mindic, is known to have participated in the number of shadowy machinations or affairs which were collected by Nabu, and what they are doing now is publishing it in bits and pieces pretty much on a daily basis, and some of them are quite extraordinary. Now, I will focus on 5 of them, even though there's much more. But just to be brief, because one can talk for hours about these things. But to be brief, number 1, which what I would call war energy link. Which means this is a scandal connected with Energoatom, which is a Ukrainian agency that controls nuclear power stations in Ukraine. And Nabu was spying over Mindic and his people for quite some time, because what they published a couple of days ago is a conversation that took place in October 2024. And they recorded it. And the conversation was about the construction of a protective shield over the Khmelnytsky nuclear power station. And in that conversation, it is clear that they were discussing a cutoff or a payback, or how to skim some money from the allocation to that protective shield, so that it could be stolen or diverted from this budget. So this is the Energoatom is one of the scandals. Now, the next one, and that's what the favorite topic of the FBI, is the offshore money laundering, and that is what the Americans are investigating. And what we have found out, something extraordinary too, is that Mindic and presumably Zelensky, his boss, have a number of offshore companies in the British Virgin Islands, a UK registered firm, and the transactions were done by Zuckerman, who had a nickname of Sugarman. And he's the one who disappeared and fled 2 days ago, together with Mindic. So this is the money laundering of the stolen money through the entities, as not surprising, in British Virgin Islands. Now, another number 2 would be the 10 to 15% kickbacks scheme, which is basically that all the military contracts that were done in Ukraine had to go through these doorkeepers, which is Mindic and the Kvartal 95 company that had nothing to do with war procurement before the war, which was actually an actors company hiring comedians. Well, now they were in charge of these contracts, and they were demanding 10 to 15% cut from every tender and every military contract. And so the wiretaps have it all on paper, on tape. And the money was then diverted to offshore accounts. So to put it in very drastic terms, Zelensky and Mindic, through him, were stealing from the money that was coming from the West. This is why the FBI is involved in this. And then channeling it off to their personal use. Now, just so that you know, the official definition of corruption is use of public office for personal gain. That's exactly what they were doing. They were abusing the state budget and the foreign aid in order to line up their pockets. And now it all came out. Number 3 is the defense sector ties, and that is also the kickbacks from the military contracts, and specifically from the company, it's called Firepoint, which produces drones and Flamingo missiles. And the NABU accuses these people of no bid contracts. In other words, contracts were awarded to favored companies, and 1,000 hours of wiretapes from the Mindich tapes, they're called, show extensive details of these uh, machinations, which count in millions, in hundreds of millions. In one of the documents, specifically $262 million in drone jamming equipment and arms. So that's the kind of activities that Mindich and his men were involved, and that involves also ministers in the current government. Two of them resigned. That also involves a lot of higher ups in the Ukrainian administration. Now, there's many other details, such as buying luxury real estate in London, and specifically Zelensky and his wife, and I really have no time to go through all of this. The facts are clear. That these are not a matter of interpretation. These are facts. Zelensky's men, the closest associates that he had known for years and with whom he had launched his businesses and his political career, are involved in graft, in money laundering, in outright theft and corruption from Ukrainian people, Ukrainian government, and from the Americans as the biggest donors. That's the fact. Now let me go to the interpretations. Who is behind it? Now, the obvious Ukrainian actors behind it is Mr. Poroshenko, the former president, who officially now proposes to remove Zelensky from power and to create a government of national unity that would be ready to lead the country, and then we don't know what. Now, there's two camps, it seems to me, and I come back to the topic of the divergence between the Americans and the Europeans. It seems to me, I may be wrong, but it seems to me that Poroshenko and his men are more focused on Trump and the Americans and the FBI, and they may be ready to blame Zelensky for all the misfortunes and the defeats at the front and the theft and corruption and everything else, to hang everything on him, and then maybe to sign a peace deal with the Russians, under the assumption that they would have continued American support. They would lose some territory, but they would keep the bulk of Ukraine, and they could continue to rule over it and enjoy American support. That seems to be what's in the making. Now, the second group, it seems to me, is Mr. Zaluzhny, and his patrons are the Europeans, and specifically the British. And it seems to me that these people, if there is a change of government, are much more interested in continued war, that Ukraine comes to blame the same thing, blame everything on Zelensky, but the purpose would be to continue the war until victory, so that the Europeans could use them to fight Russia and to inflict as much damage on Russia as possible, which was their original perspective and goal. Now, these are the two major groups supported in the elites of Ukraine, supported by the Americans and the Europeans. But it seems to me that there could be a third alternative, and that's the one that nobody expects at this point. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying it could happen. And the third alternative is that the people of Ukraine, and that is shown by a variety of sociological studies, they're tired of the war. Everybody in Ukraine wants peace now. And that is seen in the facts that 25% of the army is deserting, that there is a continuous defeats at the front, that there is a resistance of people to the draft, and especially to the notorious TCK, the units that grab young men on the streets, beat them up and throw them into the buses, and they call it busification. So it seems like Ukrainian society may explode. and may indeed a third alternative may arise by those who would say, no, it's not just Zelensky, it's Zelensky and his Western sponsors. And then it may take a kind of a pro-Russian direction in terms of a kind of a popular revolution against the current regime for peace and for a kind of rapprochement and a no honest deal with or agreement or treaty or whatever with the Russians. We shall see which of the three scenarios will take place, but it seems to be that these are extraordinary, important historical events we are witnessing, and we shall see how it will play out. And it may well be that the days of Zelensky in power are numbered. Thank you very much for your comments. I enjoy reading them and answering them. I remind you to put the like if you like it, to subscribe to my channel if you are new, and also I invite you to read my book, From Vladimir Lenin to Vladimir Putin, Russia in Search of Its Identity. The details are in the description. And I will see you soon with the next edition of Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin.